Good afternoon. This is Podcaster Politics. I'm your host, Cory Lanterman, along with Cal Greedy. Welcome to our show. Today, we'd like to talk about the Canadian politics, the election. So, Cal, what's your status out there in Ontario?
Well, it's hard to tell because the government really hasn't changed, but uh, there's a majority, so it'll be interesting to see whether any of the policies change. The majority, it's a slim, I guess, a slim. Yeah, they're going to need the NDP, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future.
So,
Right now,
being
it's too soon to
being in
say.
Windsor, you must notice a lot of the politics that influenced the election being a border city where all the traffic and goods coming in and out of the country, the tariffs should have really affected you. What
In
did
that
I mean, the audience probably would see it too, how the tariffs affected the election and what we voted on.
in that regard, I attended a seminar today by the Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association. They are a lobby group that lobbies for automotive parts manufacturers, suppliers, remanufacturers, tier one, tier two parties. And they are essentially trying to figure out what the effect of the tariffs will be on the automobile industry, particularly in Ontario, where it's centered. The uh, gentleman who gave the talk today, his name's Fabio, spent a lot of time trying to, I would suggest, cheerlead, suggesting that Canadians have to stick together regardless of their political stripe in order to provide a united front so that you can get someplace with the maniacs south of the border. In that regard, he suggested that the automobile industry partner with agriculture, oil and gas, and other Canadian industries in order to provide a united front so that one industry doesn't get picked off one at a time. So it was an interesting perspective. As far as the tariffs concerned on the automobile industry, it'll pretty much kill it.
Well, out here in the West, we would be influenced by our agriculture, our oil and gas, and under the Harper era, Harper sold off our Canadian Wheat Board, which controlled the pricing of produce for the smaller farmers. And we've seen a trend where only big farmers survive now. You can't live off a quarter section of land anymore because of that. And with the oil and gas industry out west here, it's very dominated by the U.S. They own the oil the minute it comes out of the ground to 95% of the oil. And they already control the industry setting prices. So having a unified front is almost impossible because the money boys in the West own all the media outlets, depict what the politicians are going to say and who actually gets elected in because it's a money race. They spend X number of dollars to ensure stupidity uh, is ruled in the media to get what they want to rape and pillage the West. And the election results out here really stumped me. Harper did nothing for the oil and gas and agriculture industry in Western Canada. And the Liberals came along and built a pipeline to the coast that was abandoned because of exceeding costs imposed by U.S. subsidiary companies and political influence. And that should have been heralded by the Albertans saying, hey, this created jobs and prosperity for us because it does increase the price of our oil, which increases the royalty we receive. none of that reflected in this election out here, which I'm a fifth generation Albertan and probably ninth or tenth generation Canadian, and I fail to see this anti Ottawa when Ottawa, under the Liberals, have been the only party that actually did something to force the influence of U.S. companies out of Alberta on price setting and gouging us. I mean, if this expert was thinking there was going to be unification to fight tariffs, I don't think he's seen our Premier Smith and her willingness to sell us out to the American interests. What's your take on that?
I think that's the problem. The problem is it's divide and conquer, and that was the message today, that you can't expect to win if you're each fighting a different battle. So, with the support of the pressure from export fees, for example, on agriculture, then you now have some more leverage in order to negotiate for other issues like manufacturing. If you have an export fee on minerals, export fee on power, in other words, if you start to hit back at what the Americans want rather than allow them to hit you with what they think they want. And that was his point, that as a unified uh, uh, front, you can win. But if the auto industry is going to go up against the auto lobby in the U.S. or the unions in the U.S. or the MAGA crowd in the U.S. by itself, it won't win. And if the agricultural industry thinks it's going to get away unscathed by itself, it won't. And if the oil and gas industry thinks that they're going to skip along merrily and their economy won't be affected at all, it won't. So, what the point was is that all the parties in Canada better get their act together and start agreeing on national policies. And that remains to be seen because we have so many egos involved. Everybody wants their idea to have their name on it, and it's going to be a problem.
I think one of the issues that come to mind from this discussion is that if we don't have a unified front, the Americans already own 75% of corporate Canada. What's preventing them from just walking in or saying, we're not paying the federal government any tax money, we're taking all the money and we're taking over your banking system and we own you? I mean, if we don't have a unified front, could we be another Ukraine where the big neighbor decides that, it's ours?
I think it's fundamentally a lot easier than that. All you need to do is for a premier like Smith to start talking about national issues instead of personal Calgary issues, right? And it's instead of worrying about her reelection and her constituents and making sure that the oil and gas industry uh, does whatever is necessary for its benefit, then you're going to have a problem with the rest of Canada. It's the same as the manufacturing industry down here in Ontario. People don't realize, for example, that in the auto industry, some parts go back and forth across the border 12 times
Wow.
before it's finally assembled into a vehicle. So, are you going to add 12 times the tariff onto the price of the vehicle? you know, you have to come up with some kind of miraculous accounting system to track all this, and it's just not practical. So what's going to happen? And the example that this gentleman Fabio, who's the CEO of the uh, Auto Association there, the um, Automotive Parts Manufacturing Association used was the Quebec Nordiques. You move the team out of town, and everybody that depended on the team is out of business. And right now the Americans are moving the team out of town, and unless everybody gets together and gets on the same side, we're going to the Canada's economy is going to be picked off one piece at a time. And the auto industry is critical. People out west think that auto workers are overpaid. You know, they get too many benefits, cars are too expensive. They don't realize that a lot of uh, billions of dollars of enterprise is associated with the auto industry. So they got to get their heads out of their butts and start thinking nationally. Our oil and gas line goes through the U.S. Our only customer is the U.S. You can't we can't continue like that. So
Yeah, and
it's a
I agree with you. We can't continue like that. Um, your name Cal Greedy, I understand, as a result of you living in the West and experiencing firsthand the province of Alberta and Saskatchewan
the greed in particular in Calgary. Calgary's got to be the well outside of Bay Street, the greediest place in Canada.
pays more in gasoline than anywhere else in the province of Alberta, and the head offices of Calgary make more profits here to the tune of $2 to $4 billion annually at the gas pumps. That's real greed. That's Cal greedy.
Well, it's free enterprise, and the trouble is when your government holds itself out to be a free enterprise government, they're inviting people to steal. You know, and it's unfortunate from my experience in Calgary is most of the people that live there uh, are there for the short term. They have no intention of retiring in Calgary. You know, they're there to make their fortune and they're going to move on. And as a result, you have no real sense of community as you do in other places in Canada. And when you have a premier that thinks only of herself, you know, I mean, she was pretty much the first person down to visit Trump. You know, what was that
Kiss the
about?
ring. Kiss the ring.
Yeah, yeah, and that's
Trump had
because
said he's going to do everything for oil and gas, and she was there to kiss the ring. One of the issues I have is the oil and gas, all the easy oil has been pumped out of Alberta. There's very little easy oil anymore, and it's getting more costly and more expensive and harder to get out. And we literally gave away all our oil to the U.S. interests for the sake of boom and bust jobs. I mean, that's as stupid as it gets. So, doubling the pipeline to Texas, which has a finite ability to refine our heavy oil, is only going to mean that we get less money for our oil. And that's what the U.S. wants because they'll upgrade it and sell it around the world for high profits, all at our expense. And
well the
another joke in the West is they have a royalty-free program for drilling wells where it doesn't really show up on the books because it's a royalty holiday. So you spend $1 million drilling a well, you get $1 million royalty holiday until you pay for your well, and then all the profits are paid with royalty for the next after usually about 2 years takes you to pay off your drilling costs from royalty savings. By then the production has dropped to 20% or less of your first production years. First and second year are usually the best production years. And then all of a sudden no company is there to cover the abandonment costs, and guess what? The taxpayers paid for that. So taxpayer paid for the drilling cost of a foreign company to drill. The money disappears out of the local economy because the profits head to overseas, and then we're stuck with hundreds of billions of dollars in reclamation costs and abandonment costs. That's Alberta, and that is Calgary to a T.
see one of the issue that you're speaking about is a provincial issue. It's all in the control of the province. The issue that I was discussing is a national issue, and the national issue in these uh, tariff days has to be a priority. So all of the little bits and pieces of problems that have been built up through the conservatives' reign in Alberta over the last half century can't be immediately resolved. But what you can do is the first thing you have to realize, if you only have one customer, you really don't have a market. And so the first thing that has to happen is there has to be infrastructure, and that has to be pipelines. And everybody has to get on board, and that includes the Quebecers. They can't sit there with subsidized oil and complain about dirty oil from Alberta while they spend the money on the transfer payments. That has to be fixed. And the thing is, unless that's fixed, we'll get picked off one piece at a time. And that was basically the message I got today from the seminar. It's appalling to think that there isn't any new news. The news is there's a huge problem coming down the road, and it's going to be a global depression.
I see that, the rest of Canada, especially the East, really supported uh, pro-unification through a banker named Carney, who had said that he is going to make it that all 13 provinces do business trade through themselves. And the voters realized that the West, which voted against, you know, the conservative movement, which is to sell and give everything to the U.S., which means they would have cowed under to Trump. They even supported a lot of Trump concepts. Um, the East knows that a lot of the jobs and stability that they're going to have is going to be generated out of the West and the oil patch and the stability of the oil industry. That
I think one of the issues is, of course, is Canada has a petrodollar, and the value of our dollar is dependent on the value of the petroleum that we export. We need a second and a third market. But I got to run here. I we
Okay,
we
well, we'll continue this
yeah
another day then. Well,
yeah
thank you for participation, and
yeah.
we'll have more of these, I'm sure. Thank you.
Cheers.
Subscribe to the channel, give us a like, and please share the video. And don't be afraid to share this commercial with your friends too.